Hey cousins, I'm Shemaya. It's like papaya, except it's not, and this is Plot Twist Please. Let's get into it. Oh, the 90s. Didn't we love them? Full of some of our favorite staples, tropes, actors, TV shows, movies. Pop culture was really piping hot in the 90s. And one of the most, I think, notable tropes that came out of the 90s was the Manic Pixie Dream Girl. I mean, listen, I love my Rubik's Cube. I love a lava lamp or two. But the Manic Pixie Dream Girl was the trend that kept on giving. But have you ever met a Manic Pixie Dream Girl in real life? Because I have, and you're looking at her. Now, if you're just scratching your head, right? If you're scratching behind your ears, first of all, I hope you scrub back there in the shower because people keep forgetting to scrub behind their ears. I see y'all, scrub behind your ears. Secondly, I know it might seem weird to say that a Manic Pixie Dream Girl actually exists in real life, but when you think about the neurodivergence of it all, then you can probably smell what I'm cooking. For those of you who don't know, a Manic Pixie Dream Girl is a trope in media that is usually depicted by a man. And in that perspective of the man, she is solely there to serve a purpose of enlightening him or making him discover himself or helping him to meet his end, within the plot of the medium, whether it's a TV show, a movie, or a book. There are some examples in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I'm trying to think of other examples. Sorry, there's a truck. Another example is Summer from the 500 Days of Summer. From 500 Days of Summer, not the 500 Days of Summer. I think I was getting the 700 and 500 Days of Summer mixed up title-wise. Not plot-wise, because they were different. They were different vibes, very different food groups. But that is the crux of a Manic Pixie Dream Girl. Now, another word you're going to need to know for today's episode is infantilization. Say it with me. 5, 6, 7, 8. Infantilization. Great job. The resonance, I see you. Many autistic women and other autistic folks too, not just women, probably know where I'm going with this. But in case you don't, pause right there. Don't forget to like this episode, share this episode, and subscribe to this podcast because I likes your faces and I hopes you likes mine. And if you don't, too bad because it's going to be here for the next 30 minutes. Or I guess you could always click away, but don't. Because the tea is piping hot, darling. As you can see. It's not good, but it's good for me. Yeah, that tea was not good, unfortunately. I did not do that right. But also, if you're new here, leave a comment below. Say hello. Hi. Now, back to infantilization. Infantilization is something that happens to a lot of autistic people when others perceive them as childlike. Sometimes you'll hear it in the person who perceives them's tone of voice. Sometimes you'll see it in the way that they treat them. Whatever the case, it's there. Yeah, being perceived is really not the vibe. Being on the spectrum like me, by the way, I'm on the spectrum. Being on the spectrum and being perceived when I don't plan to be perceived is not ever a good thing. Now, I say that a lot of autistic people might understand what it's like to be a real-life Manic Pixie Dream Girl because we are so used to being infantilized in the way a Manic Pixie Dream Girl is infantilized. Basically, a Manic Pixie Dream Girl, when you think of one, you think, oh, we have to protect them. We have to protect their sweet little fairy essence. And I understand, I understand that I mean, look, this is my closet. So I get it. I get the fairy essence. I understand. But when it comes to your sense of self-worth, when it comes to developing relationships, like long-term relationships with people in the real world, the Manic Pixie Dream Girl effect starts to feel less like glitter that is fun and more like glitter that you can choke on. A lot of Manic Pixie Dream Girls in real life typically find themselves being infantilized even by people who truly care about them. So I have gone back and forth in my mind concerning real life Manic Pixie Dream Girls because I, for a while, couldn't decide whether or not this person exists because people perceive her a certain way or because she plays into the stereotype. And I'm going to be honest with myself in front of you today because it's a little bit of both. Some of us have definitely played into the whole bubbly starburst personality of it all in the past. And I will say it has its pros and cons. But first, let's talk about why a neurodivergent person might opt into the stereotype in the first place. 1, pure fun and escapism. 2, safety. 3, friendship. And 4, romantic prospects. So let's start with numero uno. Pure fun and escapism. Now, I'm not going to deny being a girly girl is fun. I love it over here. I really do. Listen, most of my closet is full of pink, yellow, purple, and orange. Colors you'd for sure find in a candy store. And I'm not gonna yuck someone's yum. I would never do that. Unless I thought it absolutely necessary. But I've realized that the more I tap into that childlike vim, the more I'm infantilized. And if you can relate to that experience, it is absolutely not your fault. People have been socialized to liken feminine traits to childlike traits for centuries. I mean, if you look at the 20s and the ads from the 20s, it's actually really spooky. It's actually really scary. Some of the language that was used to describe women, it's actually really spooky because I was looking at those ads. I'll link the ads in the description. I was likening them to ads that I see now that are targeted toward women in the beauty industry. And as someone who loves beauty, as someone who loves makeup, it gave me a little bit of a pause. It gave me a little bit of a jump scare because some of the products that existed then, even though they are described differently in those ads, even though the women in those ads are described differently and the language is different, they're still using some of the same tropes of don't be like this person, be like this person. Oh, don't show the fat in your cheeks. I'm not going to get too deep into it, but let's just look at the links. Just click the links if you dare. But during that time, specifically before World War II, being feminine became synonymous with being similar to a child, not having any hair anywhere, being basically prepubescent. And I guess a lot of men liked that. We'll get to that later, or maybe not at all. Maybe not at all even. But even though some women play into this, whether for followers, financial gain, or social acceptance, it's not their fault these kinds of trends emerge. Now we'll talk about the after effects and how we perpetuate certain things that are absolutely within our power, but just know that is a factor. But what I do love is the embracing of this feminine aesthetic on our own terms, because actually we do have more power than we realize. Even as this new pop girl era is emerging with hyper-feminine stars like Sabrina Carpenter and Ray, I do feel like a new spin on femininity is taking root in Western culture. And I think that's kind of rad. I think it's kind of cool. And it's not femininity in order to be viewed as a potential wife or in order to validate one's womanhood necessarily in the eyes of men. It's just because it's nice. I mean, wearing soft fabrics is nice. Wearing gingham? It's kind of fun for me. I personally also see this trend with harnessing your power within the feminine aesthetic as it pertains to media. From the popularity of the coquette style to the popularity of the show Bridgerton. Sometimes people have a very specific political agenda with that stuff and sometimes people don't. And when it comes to people just expressing themselves, I think that's really cool. Let's think about why this has become so popular though. Why this is such a cultural phenomena. I think part of it is that women are so exhausted with every kind of expectation being thrust upon us to be conventionally attractive, to be career driven, to find a partner, to take our vitamins. Listen, taking vitamins every day is hard, but essentially we're tired of having to appease everyone and still getting chastised when we seemingly meet those expectations. So a lot of us, including me, are embracing the girlhood of it all for no one else but ourselves. There are very few things that bring me unequivocal joy, like buttercream frosting, some butterfly clips, and the twirl of a dress. And I think it's more than okay to infuse some play in everyday life. I watched Little Women for the first time the other day. All right, don't stuff me in a locker. Don't you dare. But there were so many parts of that movie that made me appreciate the innocence and nonsensical nature of youth. Why do I sound like somebody's grandma right now? The nonsensical nature of youth. Oh my... I'm in my 20s. It's not. But I also feel like my generation had to grow up so fast, with the Rona, right? And with the wild presidencies, we've been struggling. It's a struggle. It's no wonder we sought escapism through revisiting girlhood, right? You know what, though? I do hope to build a world where girls revisit girlhood, not because of trauma, but because it is pure joy that brings them back there. Mind you, I don't think we infantilize ourselves when we do this. I just think onlookers have their own perceptions without seeing the full picture of why we're embracing certain aesthetics. People, maybe specifically men, maybe not. But I think people will see a hyper-feminine woman, especially a hyper-feminine neurodivergent woman, and think, oh, this is probably for me. they're probably doing this for me. And it's like, no, sometimes we just do things because it feels good. Sometimes we just do it because it feels good. And moving on to chapter 2. Now, I do want to make it clear that safety and escapism do not necessarily serve the same purposes. So one is a necessity and the other is just nice. Even though maybe that's debatable if you listen to like some historians and scholars, maybe that's debatable during certain times in history. But I also have lately been challenging my own views on escapism. The other day, I watched a movie. I am an AMC Steps member. AMC, yes. So it was a deal. We love a deal. And I got my hot buttery popcorn on my day off. I sat down to watch a few of my favorite actors do something cool. And then the movie started. The first 5 minutes were promising, but then the movie continued. And again, I'm not going to tell you what movie it was because I got to work in this town. But before you click away, did you know that it's okay to enjoy things that are bad or things that are subpar? Did you know that? It's fine. And people frequently do like things that are subpar. Look, I love Instant Mac. I will pay a maximum $2 for it, but I love it. So maybe you infantilize yourself because it makes life easier. I'm not going to say that can never go wrong, but maybe that's just your way of creating a blissful life for yourself. You know, sometimes I think if I didn't have to work to live, would I? Well, yeah, I probably would because I love my job, but it's okay if you wouldn't. It's okay if you wouldn't. You know, some of us don't end up taking on this infantilized version of ourselves just because, and some of us do it because we have to. For a lot of women, especially women of color, being perceived as feminine can, to others, signal that we aren't dangerous or that we won't usurp power. We'll get into how that femininity can be weaponized against us on a later date. Maybe that's a behind the paywall convo. I don't know. We'll see. But moving on to the next one. Let's talk about the social capital of it all, right? Friendship. There's this cute little movie called Mean Girls that I talk about all the time now, and it's because I truly think that Katie, the main character, is autistic coded. Now don't come at me. Don't listen. Let me cook, y'all. Mean Girls, if you ask me, is about a few things. But the one thing it's about that's relevant to this podcast episode is the idea of assimilation into a culture that is unknown to you. A lot of marginalized identities can attest to having to null parts of themselves in order to blend into different social environments or even amp up certain qualities. In Mean Girls, Katie takes on different characteristics, from her hairstyle, to the clothes she wears, to her lip gloss, to the phrases she adopts, and to her daily speech. I think a lot of neurodivergent people might do something similar in order to be welcomed socially by their peers. I actually had an episode about this a long time ago. Go ahead and click on that about Mean Girls specifically. But listen, as an introvert and extrovert, I thought that only extroverts made friends for a really long time. Like I really did think that you can only have friends if you wanted to be around people all the time. I thought that if I wasn't the most outgoing person in the room, I'd fade into the background. I will say too that I definitely amped up the social dial of my personality for a while, until I was eventually exhausted. And many of us slightly extroverted autistics do. But eventually, you know, we see the sun peek through the clouds and we go, wait a minute, being extroverted is a full-time job. And I'm not even getting paid for that one. Weird. So it started to not make sense, you see. But what I also realized was that being a hyper-feminine, extroverted autistic woman makes it fairly easy for people to infantilize you. Not through any fault of your own, it just happens. And for a while, you're comfortable in that role. You know exactly what to say, how to say it, how to exaggerate your facial expressions, right? How to open your eyes. And it's comforting, that predictability, having the script and living by it. It makes the day less exhausting because there are less social equations to solve in real time. But then it starts to get old. I wonder what would happen if you embraced the different parts of yourself the way you deeply want others to embrace you. I wonder if that would make a difference. I have an inkling that it would. I think this becomes even more important of a question when it comes to romantic relationships, which brings me to chapter 4, dating. Now, in my life, I know that wearing pastels and having a high-pitched voice at times and wearing my hair long has certain benefits. Sometimes, okay, I'll decide later if this is going to go behind the paywall, but I think a lot of women opt into these hyper feminine roles in order to seem more appealing to the men that they want to partner. Now, I do think wanting to be a princess isn't bad. I don't think it's bad. Absolutely not. But I think it's a thin line to walk. I will say, I used to be attracted to a very specific kind of guy. I wanted to be with the guy who was cruel to everyone but me, and I wanted to be the princess that thawed his frozen heart. I will say, it's the most unoriginal thing I have ever done. Tragic. But here's what I found out after I grew up. I was attracted to the kind of guy who was cruel because I perceived cruelty as a strength that I myself didn't possess. But now I see that actually I am strong. I'm one of the strongest people I know. And it's not because I demand respect, if that's even possible to demand respect, right? It's because I'm kind. It's because I'm me. Being me takes strength, and no one can give or take that away from me. Also, I say no one can, quote, demand respect because respect can only be given. Either someone respects you or they don't. You can't make someone feel respect toward you. You can demand silence. You can demand obedience. But respect? Not so much. So, my philosophy as it pertains to dating has since become the following. I will only date men who are kind and to whom I don't have to prove my worth. Sure, courting is a thing. If that's your vibe, that's your vibe. But when I have to put on a show to make someone respect me, it's a wrap. It's a wrap. Goodbye. I do think that a lot of autistic people, though we have this strong sense of justice and clear ideas of what dating should be, we end up thwarting those things once we see that we, quote, have a shot at a relationship. And it's not just autistic people. Bell Hooks says, if any female, if anyone feels they need anything beyond themselves to legitimize or validate their existence, they are already giving away their power to be self-defining, their agency. Well, something that I've grappled with lately, or that I'm currently grappling with when it comes to people's philosophies as they go through the dating process, is the fact that this is going to hurt. People don't have ideologies in dating. Or shall I say, a lot of people don't. They have ideas about politics and ideologies, etc., that they keep in a box over here, but they don't integrate that into the actual practices of dating. I know so many women who actively fight for certain things when it comes to government policy, per se. But when you look at who they're dating or who they're married to, you get whiplash. It's like, how can you support insert group here if you're dating someone who treats those same people with utter disrespect? Hey, maybe you're the exception. Maybe they hate all women except you. But maybe you're not the exception. Maybe you are the one person in that group that they can stand. But what does that say about you? What does that say about them? Now, this is a half-baked take, but, I just feel like for every man who hates women, there is a woman telling him he can do anything he sets his mind to. Ooh. Okay. I might have to rant about this. I'm gonna go rant about this on the Patreon side. I'll be right back. Okay, back from my rant. Good to see you again. So let's figure out how we can reclaim girlhood in dating without putting ourselves in precarious positions. I really do think there's something empowering about being a Black woman and demanding the right to be soft, claiming the space to feel and be sensitive and having your quote unquote Disney princess moment. We don't get that often. Not having to break your neck to earn rest. There's something to it. And I think that as long as you're not sacrificing who you are, what you want, and how you want to be treated, I hope you and your frills have a good old time. I also hope you remember that at the end of the day, you should stop seeking people who you want to like you and start embracing the people who already do. It'll save you lots of time. Anyway, I hope this was entertaining or informative or something. Go ahead and share this episode if anything in it resonated with you, or comment below. Be blessed. Stay weird. Happy Juneteenth. Bye.